There's a new mystery drug that's hitting the party scene in Ibiza. It's called pink cocaine, and whilst the bright colour of the drug might remain the same in every batch, what's inside the drug is Russian roulette, changing from dealer to dealer, and can even include the lethal drug fentanyl. So why is the popular party drug so unpredictable, and will it make its way to the UK? I'm Lucrezia Millarini, and this is what you need to know. Hello and welcome to today's episode of What You Need to Know. Joining me today is our reporter George Hancorn, who's just returned from Ibiza investigating the rise of the popular party drug pink cocaine. Welcome to the podcast, George. Okay, tell us about the investigation. Why did you decide to do it in the first place, and why is this drug pink cocaine so unpredictable?
So we've been tracking the drug for a little while, mostly kind of seeing where it pops up here, and occasionally you see drug testing alerts put out at festivals over here that the drug is here. So we then wanted to track it back and find out where potentially we could be seeing it. So we saw lots of insane raid pictures from police in Spain where they were breaking down gangs that were making the drug and pushing it around parts of Spain. So we basically went and we thought, well, where do most British people go? They make up a lot of the people that go to Ibiza. Let's go to Ibiza, and that's where a lot of drugs potentially in circulation. It's a big part of the nightlife scene there. So we kind of combined those two aspects and went to Ibiza, and some of the stuff we found was pretty interesting.
Tell us a bit about the drug then. What's inside it? Why is it like, it's called pink cocaine? We've all heard of cocaine, haven't we? So what is this? What's inside it? What's it made up of?
I think this is the common misconception, because there's rarely any pink cocaine in it at all. It's usually a mix of a cocktail of other drugs. So usually ecstasy, ketamine, sometimes caffeine, speed. But this summer that we were there, we noticed batches that were being laced with fentanyl, which is obviously a highly addictive opioid. Yeah. It's quite dangerous. Yeah. So often not cocaine at all, in most cases.
Why has it become so popular in Ibiza? Is it because it's just more accessible there? What's the story behind it?
I guess it's relatively cheap to make. Like cocaine is a little bit more expensive than, say, other drugs like ecstasy and ketamine, but because it's a mix of, almost the loose ends of other drugs, essentially, it is quite cheap. So the markup can be quite big. The thing that we found quite interesting as well, it's dyed pink, so it's quite attractive to potentially younger party goers. Also smells of strawberries, so it's similar to kind of the sweet vapes that you'd see on the market at the moment that young people are using a lot. Yeah. So I think there's a few aspects in there, but mostly because it's quite cheap to make, and that it's quite appealing, quite attractive to younger people.
Cheap to make, cheap to buy, I'm assuming as well. So that's
it depends. I mean, we went undercover as part of this investigation, so we went on to the busy strip, the Playa d'Embossa strip, where we were approached by several dealers, had 6 different dealers approach us in less than 15 minutes, which was huge. Yeah. The prices there range from between €70 to €100 a gram, so probably roughly the same amount people will be paying for cocaine, say.
Okay, well listen, you went undercover, as you say. Give us a bit more detail about what happened then.
So we went to the busy Playa d'Embossa strip, which is an area that if people have been to Ibiza before, they'll be pretty familiar with. So that's where all the big world-famous super clubs are. And if you go there on any of the busy nights, it is rammed. There are huge crowds, and it kind of continues, for hours and hours and hours. So we set up at the beginning of the busy strip, and I basically just walked with an undercover camera all the way up the strip and was approached the first time within 30 seconds, asking if I wanted to buy the drug, telling me what it was, what was in it, the price, quoted 70 euros for a gram. This dealer showed me how easy it was to get here on the island, then carried on up the strip, were approached another 6 times before a dealer invited me behind his car, basically, so we could see the drug, so we could show it on camera. And then as we tried to leave the strip, we were hassled a little bit and weren't left alone, so had to kind of retreat for safety. But it just shows, police said to us that they were doing all they could to bring down the sale of the drugs on the island and in that busy area, but just from that 15 minutes of undercover filming, that wasn't what we found ourselves.
We're going to get to the police response in just a minute, but let's just look a bit more at this pink cocaine, the drug itself. And because of its constituent parts, the fact that it's a mix of all sorts of drugs, it seems, that it can actually be incredibly dangerous. It can be lethal to take. Now, we know that one 14-year-old in Ibiza actually died after taking pink cocaine in an energy drink, didn't they?
So that was last year. So there aren't too many details about this. We had no formal identification of the 14-year-old boy. But what we do know is that he was given an energy drink by teens that he met online. He then drank the energy drink and it was laced with pink cocaine. And obviously within that, then there's a mix of loads of different drugs. The impact that that has on your body it is quite severe. And a medic out there on the island told us that if people were using the drug, it was a bit like a Russian roulette.
Yeah, you just don't know what you're going to get inside. And you actually spoke to a doctor, didn't you? He said the Russian roulette. What else did he say as well?
So he also told us about how the hospitals there were overrun with patients that he'd seen who'd taken the drug. He also talked about how addictive it was. He talks about the British culture and how people were basically needed to be more alert about what the drug could do and some of the potential risks.
And, you know, not to be naive here, but as you say, Ibiza, it's this famous party island, isn't it? Obviously, we know that people are taking drugs there. They're drinking a lot of alcohol as well, aren't they? But what was the doctor saying to you when you were out there? Is there a sense that this particular drug, because of its constituent parts, because of the fact that it's mixed with stuff like fentanyl, which is incredibly dangerous, is there more worry about this than other drugs on the island at the moment?
It's hard to know if there's... I mean, I suppose the big concern for this is it's so unpredictable because you could have 5 different batches of this drug and each of those 5 could have a different makeup of ingredients. So they'll still have the core components, but they could be different strengths. So if people are going into, say, A&E in Ibiza and they said they've taken this drug, it's still very hard to know exactly what was in it. And I think because there is less of a conversation perhaps about this drug in particular, because it still appears to be, certainly over here in the UK, like on the rise, but it is quite big in Ibiza, and not enough is known about it, and potentially some of those risk factors that people need to be aware of, maybe that they're not so much.
Yeah. So listen, let's talk about the police. First of all, the police in Ibiza. Summer season is well underway, isn't it? And it's going on longer and longer, the seasons. Now, military police apparently are out and about in Ibiza. Have they got any plan to stop the spread of this drug in particular?
So we were very lucky. We actually spent a week with Ibiza's Guardia Civil. So they are the military police. So they look a little bit scarier than the normal police, but they are essentially doing the similar sort of thing. But the interesting thing was for the second year in a row, they've pulled resource from all over mainland Spain. So there are 15 times more visitors to Ibiza during the summer season than any other time of the year. So it's a very busy time, and there are a lot of British people, largely like the majority of people, tourist-wise, are from the UK. So we spent some time with them, and there were sort of several pronged approach to what they were doing to tackle drugs and petty crime. So they were spending time at the airport, so as people were touching down, they were doing checks. Anyone that looked suspicious, maybe checking bags, that kind of thing. We also did some roadside checks. So they were pulling over vehicles where drivers were giving them signs to suggest that potentially they could be carrying drugs. We didn't find any pink cocaine specifically during that 1 hour that we were there, but the police did find other drugs that people had in their cars.
Now, you may or may not know the answer to this, but did you get the sense they are targeting the dealers themselves, or they are actually doing random stop and searches? So they're looking at people who are actually out there partying, who might be buying it. Where is their focus?
It's hard to know for sure. I think the police, it would be fair to say they probably have some awareness of maybe the drug network or how that operates on the island. For as far as we saw, it was just sort of day-to-day people, whether it was in their cars, but perhaps those people could have been carrying drugs as part of a wider network. Very hard to tell, but from what we saw, it was just targeting sort of day-to-day people maybe there on holiday, people who could have been concealing drugs.
Now, you said already we are seeing pink cocaine in the UK already. How concerned should people be about it being here?
So I don't want to be too alarmist. It's not going to suddenly pop up overnight. However, say there was an event or a festival next week and we saw several batches of this drug, the issue is it's so unpredictable. So each of those batches could have a different makeup. We've been given some figures by Wedanos, so that's a Public Health Wales funded testing service. So nightlife venues, police, people using the drug can send in drugs to be tested to find out what it is if they're concerned, if there's something they found that they want to get over to get tested. And this is quite interesting because this really shows the spread of the drug in the UK so far. So in the last 2 months, we've seen the drug in several areas, including Rhyl in North Wales, Macclesfield, Sheffield and Southwark. So that does give you an idea of the spread of the drug across the UK.
Yeah.
And according to the experts, the drug testers we spoke to, we're only going to see that increase in the coming months and years to come.
Yeah, and I guess the final thought really is if there are services that are offering testing of substances, because the reality is it's not just this pink cocaine, right? It's anything that you might buy at a festival or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't know what's in it. That's the bottom line. You don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
That's the danger.
And I suppose the bottom line is, using drugs in the first place is incredibly dangerous and illegal.
Yeah.
However, campaigners would say that it's going to happen anyway,
Yeah.
so let's put the alerts out. So there are drug testing organisations, the Loop, Mandrake, who we spent time with in Manchester, who will test drugs in their lab and then put out alerts on social media, say at festivals or events, to warn people about some potentially dangerous drugs in circulation. And one of those that they've been warning about recently is, of course, pink cocaine. So we will see if that starts to appear more in the UK.
All right, George, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for talking to me. And to everyone else, thank you for listening. For more on this, head over to ITVX, where you can watch George's full investigation and, of course, have a look back through our other quick briefings on a range of headline topics to find out exactly what you need to know. Until the next time, thank you for listening.